The FSB. Look at this building. 9 floors, yellow stone, right in the middle of Moscow on a square called Lubyanka. From the street, it looks like an insurance company. It is the most feared address in Russia. And the reason is that the organization inside it never actually went away. Let me explain. August 1991. A group of hardliners, including the head of the KGB, tries to seize control of the Soviet Union. The coup fails in 3 days, and on the tanks outside the Russian parliament, there's a man giving a speech, Boris Yeltsin. Watch the man standing directly behind him. We will come back to him. By November, the KGB is finished. Officially. But look at what actually happened to it. It was not shut down. It was cut into pieces, and each piece was handed to a new agency with a new name. The spies went here. The bodyguards went here. The codebreakers went here. And the domestic security arm, the part that watched Soviet citizens, went through 2 rebrands in 3 years before settling on a name in 1995. That name is the FSB. Same work, same staff, same building, new letterhead. Now, the FSB's official job is inside Russia. Counterintelligence, borders, terrorism, surveillance, serious crime. Its director is appointed by the president and reports to the president, not to parliament, not to a court. But here's the part almost nobody notices. In 1992, the Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, signed an agreement. It promised not to run espionage operations inside the other former Soviet republics, 15 countries that had just become independent, and Russia's spy agency agreed to stay out of them. The FSB signed nothing. So when the FSB absorbed the Border Service and most of the State Communications Agency in 2003, it picked up that work with no such promise attached. Read that again. The domestic service is the one with no restrictions abroad. The FSB is the one everybody has heard of. It is not the biggest, and it is not the newest. Rosgvardia, 340,000 men. Now, remember the man standing behind Yeltsin on that tank in 1991. His name is Viktor Zolotov, and he was a bodyguard. Watch his career. He starts in 1975 in the KGB border troops. By 1991, he is guarding Yeltsin. In the 90s, he takes a job protecting the mayor of St. Petersburg, and there he meets the deputy mayor, a man called Vladimir Putin. They spar together, boxing and judo, and for years afterwards, whenever Putin appears in public, Zolotov is the man walking directly behind him. Now look at 2016. On the 5th of April, Putin signs a decree creating a brand new federal service. It does not recruit anyone. It takes units that already exist, the internal troops, the riot police, the rapid response teams, and moves them out of the Interior Ministry whole into a new agency. Same men, same trucks, same barracks. One thing changes, who they report to. Rosgvardia is legally separate from the Russian army. Its commander does not answer to the Ministry of Defense. He answers directly to the president. And the man Putin appointed to command those 340,000 troops is his former bodyguard. Now read the mandate. Borders, gun licensing, counterterrorism, organized crime, guarding critical sites, all normal. And one more, preventing a color revolution. That is the term Russia uses for the popular uprisings that removed governments in Georgia, Ukraine, and Kyrgyzstan. So this force is explicitly tasked with stopping a revolution, and it does not report to the army, the police, or the Interior Ministry. Creating it reportedly caused real friction in the Kremlin because it stripped the Interior Ministry of forces it had run for decades, which tells you it was never really about efficiency. Inside Rosgvardia sits one unit you have definitely seen, even if you did not know its name. OMON. You have seen these men. Gray helmets, round shields, moving in a line, clearing a street. Every piece of protest footage that comes out of Russia has them in it. Here's where they came from, and it is not where you would guess. Munich, 1972. Palestinian gunmen take the Israeli Olympic team hostage. 11 athletes die. The rescue attempt fails badly, and every country planning to host a future Olympics watches it happen on television. Now go forward 7 years. The Soviet Union is preparing to host the 1980 Summer Games in Moscow, and it does not intend to repeat Munich. So in 1979, it builds its first police tactical unit. Hostage rescue. High-risk arrests. Counterterrorism. The games come, the games go. The unit stays, it keeps expanding, and on the 3rd of October 1988, the modern OMON is formally founded in Moscow. Look at that date. The Soviet Union has 3 years left, the streets are becoming unstable, and the men being recruited are former Soviet army soldiers and veterans of the war in Afghanistan. So follow the logic through. A unit designed to storm terrorists holding hostages, staffed by combat veterans from Afghanistan, is now the unit sent to manage crowds of civilians. Nothing about that was built for crowd control. Through the 90s and 2000s, the role widened again. Cordons, street patrols, and in several conflicts, operations that looked far more military than police. Then in April 2016, OMON moved out of the Interior Ministry into Rosgvardia, 28 years inside the police structure, and then one decree. The uniforms did not change. The reporting line did. Watch for that because it keeps happening. Every reorganization ends the same way. The men with shields end up one step closer to the top, and the service that guards the very top is stranger than any of them. The FSO, 50,000 people to protect a few dozen. On paper, this is his bodyguard service. It protects the president and senior officials, and it secures certain federal properties. And that is the entire stated mandate. 50,000 uniformed personnel, plus several thousand more in plain clothes. That is bigger than the standing army of quite a few countries. It comes from the 9th Chief Directorate of the KGB, the arm that guarded the Soviet leadership, and it took its modern shape under a KGB general named Alexander Korzhakov. Korzhakov is worth stopping on. He was Yeltsin's bodyguard from 1985. He is the other man on that tank in 1991. And for 11 years, he was closer to the Russian president than any minister. He was widely accused of interfering in government and business, and he lost a power struggle and was sacked in 1996. Then he ran for parliament and won, which gave him immunity from prosecution. And in his memoir, he claimed that he and the security service had governed the country for 3 years. Hold that thought. Now, the law that created the modern FSO contains one line that most people read straight past. It says the president, while in office, may not decline state protection. Not is offered. May not refuse. So the head of state cannot dismiss the people who guard him. And look at what else this agency holds. It runs the secure communications system used by the senior leadership, and it controls the Cheget, the Russian nuclear briefcase. Add that up to Harry's a bodyguard service that cannot be sent away, that carries the nuclear command system, that runs the leadership's phones, and that can reportedly search, surveil, and arrest without a warrant. 2 Russian presidents, 2 bodyguards who became powers in their own right. That is twice now. Keep counting. The next one you will never see at all. The SVR. Here is everything I can legally show you about the people who work here. Nothing. Not blurred. Not redacted. There is no public list, because Russian law makes the identity of an SVR officer a state secret. Not their operations. Them. And in September 2018, that protection was extended further. It now covers agents, informants, and sources. Not just the professionals, the people they recruit. So if you talk to the SVR, your name is protected by the same class of law that protects nuclear secrets. This is Russia's Civilian Foreign Intelligence Service. It took over from the first chief directorate of the KGB in December 1991. It works out of a complex at Yasenevo on the southern edge of Moscow, and its director reports straight to the president. The FSB looks inward. The SVR looks outward, and it dates itself further back than 1991. It counts its founding from December 1920 and a foreign department set up inside the Cheka, the first Soviet secret police, by a man called Felix Dzerzhinsky. That is the same Dzerzhinsky whose statue stood in Lubyanka Square outside the building we started in. From the Cheka to the OGPU to the NKVD to the KGB to the SVR. A century of continuous work under 5 different names. So you would expect this to be the big one. It is not. According to a GRU defector, by 1997, Russian military intelligence had roughly 6 times as many officers working abroad as the SVR did. That comes from one defector, and it has never been independently confirmed. But the direction of it is not really disputed. Russia's largest foreign intelligence operation is not run by its foreign intelligence agency. It is run by the army, the GRU. Look at the chart we've built so far. FSB reports to the president. Rosgvardia reports to the president. FSO reports to the president. SVR reports to the president. Now add the GRU. It reports to the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff. There is a layer of command between it and the Kremlin, and it is the only one of these agencies with that gap. You would expect that to make it the weakest. It did the opposite. The GRU is reputed to be Russia's largest foreign intelligence agency. It runs its own special forces, spetsnaz, with a figure around 25,000 troops cited by that same. Treat the number carefully, but the structure is not in doubt. This is an intelligence service with an army inside it, and it has a specific reputation among people who study these organizations. Not better tradecraft. More appetite for risk. A willingness to run complicated, high-stakes operations that other services would refuse. Its history goes back further than the Soviet Union entirely. Russian military intelligence traces to 1810, when the war minister proposed a secret affairs department to Tsar Alexander I during the Napoleonic Wars. Count the regimes it has outlived: the Empire, the Revolution, Stalin, the Soviet collapse. It was reorganized and renamed through all of them, and it is still here. So here is the strange result. The agency furthest from the president is the largest, the most aggressive, and the best at surviving. Being outside the room turns out to be the safest place to stand. Now, two agencies that almost every list leaves out. Both of them touch far more ordinary Russians than anything I have covered so far. The FSIN, 872 institutions. That is the Russian prison system as counted in March 2022, and it is run by this agency, which sits under the Ministry of Justice. Now, break that number apart because the breakdown is the entire story. 204 pre-trial detention centers, 18 juvenile colonies, 642 corrective colonies, and 8 actual prisons. 8 out of 872. In most countries, a prison is the default, a building in a city where people are held. In Russia, that is the rare exception. The standard unit is the corrective colony, a labor colony, frequently in a remote region a long way from wherever the prisoner actually lived. That is not an accident of geography. It is an inherited design. The FSIN was created in 2004 and named in 2006. Officially, it traces itself to the main prisons directorate of the Russian Empire, founded in 1879. That is the respectable version. The direct inheritance is the Soviet one. It succeeds the correctional services of the Soviet Interior Ministry, and that includes the Gulag Agency. And look at what that word actually is. Gulag is not a place. It is an acronym for a government department, the main directorate of correctional labor camps. It was a bureaucracy. Established in 1930, it ran a system that by the end of 1940 held roughly 1.5 million people. That department was restructured, absorbed, and renamed, and its functions became the organization that runs Russian prisons today, which is why the colony, not the prison, is still the standard unit. The buildings changed. The architecture did not. One left. And this one was created to investigate the others. The investigative committee, in Russian Sledkom. This is the one that investigates the police. Since January 2011, it has been Russia's main federal investigation bureau. Before that, investigators sat under the prosecutor general. They were pulled out and made separate, and in January 2011, President Medvedev appointed a man named Alexander Bastrykin to run it. He is still running it. 15 years. Now read the mandate, because on paper it is genuinely reformist. It investigates serious crime, it functions as Russia's anti-corruption agency, and it has statutory responsibility for inspecting the police, investigating police corruption and police misconduct, and investigating local authorities and federal government bodies. That is a real oversight function, a body whose formal job is to investigate the state. It started at around 19,000 investigators, plus about 2,000 military ones. A 2012 law was meant to expand it towards 60,000, largely by absorbing investigators from the Interior Ministry. So the agency that investigates the police was designed to grow by taking the police's own investigators. And now the line that resolves it: the investigative committee is answerable to the president. Put that against the job description: a body built to investigate government corruption, reporting to the head of that government. Its independence from the police is structural and real. Its independence from the presidency does not exist. To be fair, that is not a uniquely Russian problem. Plenty of countries have anti-corruption bodies reporting to an executive. But it completes the picture. So look at the whole board: 8 agencies. Domestic security, a national guard, riot police, presidential protection, foreign intelligence, military intelligence, prisons, investigations. In most countries, those functions are separated on purpose so that no one office holds all of them and so they can check each other. They are separated here too, but follow the lines. Almost every one of them terminates in the same office. They overlap, they compete, they have taken units and budgets off each other repeatedly, and every one of those fights is settled by the same man. That is not checks and balances. That is a set of rivals with a single referee. And remember where we started. A man on a tank in 1991 with his bodyguard beside him. That bodyguard later said he ran the country for 3 years. The bodyguard standing behind the next president now commands 340,000 troops. In Russia, the people who guard power have a habit of becoming it. Subscribe if you want more of these.